Start this up. All right. We're going to begin in prayer, and then we're going to dive into what God has to teach us today. So I'm going to need everyone to open up their notes again, and then just fold your hands and pray with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for bringing all of these youth and leaders to this place tonight to hear from your word and what you have to teach us today. God, as we learn more about the parables that you spoke during your time here on earth, I just pray that it teaches us what it's supposed to. And no matter whether we're having a good day or a bad day or a good week or a bad week, remind us that you meet us there and that you love us regardless. In your name I pray. Amen. All right, so I also wanted to do that little Price is Right game because we are going to be talking a lot about value today. Now, how do I determine someone's value? So let me just give an example. So if I were to have you guys all close your eyes and I were to distribute this, and this around the room, and I said, whoever gets to these things first, gets to keep them, what do you think would happen? Would everyone be running? This is a dead battery, a pencil, and a Crystal Light packet. No. Not really, okay, right? But what if I were to say, there's a $50 Amazon gift card and a $5 bill somewhere in the room. The first person to grab it gets it. What would happen then? Yeah, you guys would go running, right? So these things have different value. What determines their value? Why would you run to the gift card or the money more than you would like a pencil and a dead battery? Yeah.
Because with the money, you can buy a lot of stuff, and with the dead batteries, you can't do anything with it.
Exactly. So you're saying the usefulness of it, right? The usefulness of it can determine the value, absolutely. So what are some things that you personally value? I want you guys to talk about it in your small group for 2 seconds. Come up with like 1 or 2 things that you as a group value. What's something you guys value? What do you think? What do you think? What's one thing that you guys value? What? Clothing? Money? Okay. Food? Water? So the things you need for survival? Yeah.
Wait. I have a dog. Wait.
All right, guys. So what's some examples of things that we value in this room? Raise your hand. And if you're not raising your hand, then you shouldn't be talking. Go ahead.
My money.
Your money. All right. What else? What else do we value here? Yeah. Time. Absolutely. Money, time. What else do we value? Yeah. Parents. Good. What else? Yeah. Pets? That adorable golden doodle is sticking around for free time if you want to get some pets in. So where does the value come for all the things that you listed? Why is it valuable to you? Do you guys know? What makes things that are valuable to us valuable? What about when we're talking about people? What makes a relationship valuable to us? Yeah. You have someone to talk to, so it's somebody that treats you well, right? So a lot of the times, how we value people and relationships is related to how they treat us. And have any of you guys had someone treat you so bad that you were like, I'm cutting off this relationship, it's not worth it to me, I don't value this relationship anymore? Has that happened with anyone? So a lot of times that's how we operate, right? In the story that we're going to be talking about tonight, that's the exact opposite. We're going to be talking about a father was treated incredibly terrible and yet still valued the people that he's going to be interacting with immensely. Okay? What story do you think we're going to be talking about just off of that information? Yeah.
Paul.
Paul is a really good answer, but not quite.
Jeremiah.
What story is going to be about a father valuing his sons even though he was mistreated? Any idea?
The Bible. It's the Bible.
It is the prodigal son. Wow, so this is going to be great because this is apparently new to a lot of you, which I love. And if you guys were at Generate this year, we did talk a lot about the prodigal son, so I hope and I pray that you'll know some of these answers off the top of your back, okay? So let's see. We're going to open our Bibles up to Luke 15. So I need you to open up to 1747 in your Bibles. 1747. Luke 15. Now, I don't want you guys talking when we open our Bibles up to Luke 15 because I want to teach you a little bit about Luke 15. So, what you guys might not realize about Luke is that he was the only Gentile author of the Bible. He's the only one that's not Jewish that wrote a book of the Bible. A lot of people don't realize that. He was a doctor, and he was also a person that traveled with Paul throughout a lot of his missionary journeys. He was a companion of Paul. So this is Luke that wrote this gospel mostly for Gentiles, which was his people, okay? So we are going to be talking, like I said, about the parable of the prodigal son. But there's two parables that come right before it. First question, though, what is a parable? When I say we're going to talk about 3 parables, what does that mean? Because that's a word we don't really use in normal life. So what does a parable mean? It's kind of only really talked about in the Bible. What's a parable? Yeah.
A lesson?
Yeah, it's a lesson, and it's a lesson or a teaching that is given through a story. So basically, like fables are kind of like this too, where you tell a story and there's a lesson at the end. It's teaching you something. Jesus gave a lot of parables during his teaching, during his ministry. And his ministry is only considered 3 years. So during the 3 years that he was doing his public ministry on earth, he spoke in parables a lot. And he spoke in parables to teach other people. So every single one of the parables we're going to look at tonight has a lesson or a teaching attached to it. Okay? So we're going to be looking first at 2 parables, Luke 15, 1 through 10. So I'm going to read it for you guys. I hope you guys have been doing this while I've been away, but when we read from the Word of God, what do we make sure is happening? Yes, we are completely silent. It's one thing to talk over me. We do not talk over the Word of God ever. So we're going to be starting in Luke 15, verse 1. The parable of the lost sheep. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to him, and the Pharisees and the scribes grumbled, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. "What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he has lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost.' Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Or, what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one coin, does not light a lamp and sweep the house and seek diligently until she finds it? And when she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I have lost.' Just so I tell you, there is joy before the angels of God over one sinner who repents." Okay, so what's the theme with both of these parables? What do they have in common? They mirror each other, so what do they have in common? If you had to summarize it. Yeah.
They both involve something lost.
Yes. So they both involve something that is lost, that is found, and then what happens after it's found in both? Yeah. They rejoice. So what this is teaching us, right, is that when we are lost, aka sinners, are lost, and they are found, they come into God's family, there is rejoicing and celebrating with the angels and the saints. Which is really cool because this is one of the main functions of angels that we see in Scripture. They're partiers, okay? They party and they celebrate every time a sinner is saved. Now, what I find interesting is that those two parables are basically the same. They mirror each other, right? And it says that there are two big audience groups that are listening to these parables. And the third parable we're going to talk about most of the night is also getting heard by these two groups of people. Who are the two groups of people that are hearing these three parables? Do you guys know? It's at the very beginning in verse 1. There's two major groups. What do you think? You only need to be able to read one sentence, verse 1. What are the two groups? Yeah.
Tax collectors and sinners.
Yep. So the first group is tax collectors and sinners, which for our purposes tonight, we are going to label the rebels. Okay? The rebels are people that don't follow the rules. They live unrighteously. They live recklessly. They live sinful lives, right? They're the rebels. What's the other group that is listening to Jesus teach? Yeah.
Pharisees and scribes.
Amazing, yes. Pharisees, which I don't think I'm going to spell right. Pharisees and scribes. And these guys, we're going to call the religious. The religious are rule followers. They think that they know everything. Unfortunately, they also think that they are perfect, and they look down on those that would be considered the rebels. And so Jesus knows this about both of these groups. He's a good teacher. Actually, Jesus is the best teacher that has ever lived, right? And good teachers always know the audience that they are speaking to. They always do. So he knows that both of these groups of people are in his audience. And the parable he's about to teach them, the parable of the prodigal son, is going to hit each group of these, the rebels and the religious, very, very differently, but also very, very hard. Okay, so let's dive in. It's going to be the parable of the prodigal son, verse 11. Can you guys put your finger on verse 11? Make sure that you know where we're at. Perfect, great. So we're going to start just with 11 through 12. And he said, there was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. And he divided his property between them. So, what is the younger son asking his father? I mean, we can wait all day, but it's really easy. What is he asking his father? What does he want from his father? Yeah. Yeah, he wants money. He wants his inheritance early. So the younger son would have been entitled to about 1/3 of the inheritance, whereas the older son we're about to hear from a little bit later would be entitled to about 2/3 of the inheritance. So this younger son goes up to the dad, says, I want my 1/3 of the inheritance right now, right here. Now, what is that in essence saying to the dad? Yeah. I want you to die. I would rather have your stuff than have you, right? I would rather have your money and you to be gone. A natural reaction to that would probably be to be upset, right? But we're going to see that, surprisingly, the father gives it to him, right? So verse 13 says that he divided his property between them. So he gave the younger son his inheritance early, even though he was saying, basically, I don't care about you, I want your stuff. Verse 13 says, Not many days later, the younger son gathered all that he had and took a journey into a far country. And there he squandered, that means basically he got rid of and foolishly spent his property in reckless living. So he basically squandered away, got rid of, foolishly spent all of his money, 1/3 of his inheritance, and he was recklessly living, which basically meant he was committing all of these very awful and public sins. So he was sinning and he got rid of all of his money. What do you think, if you were hearing this, what do you think the rebels are thinking about this story so far? If you were one of the tax collectors or sinners hearing this part of the story, what would you say? What would be going through your mind? What do you think? Because I think if I was sitting there and I was a tax collector or sinner and he just talked about all this younger son taking all this money, disrespecting his father, going out, sinning and wasting all the money, I bet I'd probably feel like, man, he's talking about me. I've made a lot of bad mistakes. I've cheated. I've lied. I've sinned. He's talking about me. That's probably what's going through their minds right now, okay? So let's continue. We're in verse 14. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. So what do you think would be going through the Pharisees and scribes, the religious people, once they heard that part of the story? About what happened to the younger son. What do you think they were like? These are the people that tended to look down on those people. Yeah. Oh, no, that's good. What do you think? Yeah. Right? No, that's a great answer. Yeah. He better have learned his lesson, serves him right. Like, that's exactly what should happen to those sinners that disrespect God's law and don't follow the rules. This was the bottom of the bottom. He was most likely, because he was in a heathen land, right? So he was most likely getting hired by Gentiles, and he was taking care of pigs. Why would that have been the bottom of the bottom for a Jewish boy? That is like rock bottom, yeah. Yeah, so pigs were considered unclean. So not only is he working for Gentiles, which would not have been cool, he also is taking care of pigs, one of the most unclean animals that there are. So he was at the bottom of the barrel. He had hit rock bottom in his life. That was the worst place that he could be as a Jewish boy, okay? So let's keep going in verse 17. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Trust me as one of your hired servants.'" So what is he saying? He's basically saying, okay, he realizes, I'm at the bottom of my life right now. There's no place to go than up, and the people that are servants with my father are treated better than I'm being treated. So I'm going to go back to my father, and I'm going to prepare this speech. Have you guys ever messed up really bad, and you decided that when you were making your apology, you're going to have this big speech, and you practice over and over again about how you're going to apologize to that person? Has anyone ever had that happen? Or maybe when you're going to go to your parents and apologize for something, you think about the way that you're going to apologize because you want to make sure that it comes out correctly. Hopefully that's happened to some people here. It's definitely happened to me, where I've kind of needed to practice what I'm going to say. This is what's happening. He's saying, I'm practicing what I'm going to say to my father so that he'll take me back as a servant, not as a son. So at this point, who do you think the younger son is representing? Which one of these groups? The younger son. Yeah.
Rebels?
Yeah, he's a rebel, right? He's a tax collector. He's a sinner. He spent all the money. So the people probably most resonating with him are the tax collectors and sinners in this audience right now. They're saying, man, maybe I could have done something like that. Let's be honest, okay? And the Pharisees probably are thinking, man, he's about to get what's coming to him, right? This father's about to light him up when he comes home. That's probably what they're thinking about. All right. Verse 20. Okay. And and he arose, so this is the younger son again, and he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. The father's reaction would have been a shocking reaction to both of these groups of people, right? The rebels would be expecting the father to light in to the son, yell at him, berate him, disown him, maybe, if he was merciful, treat him like a servant. The Pharisees thought that was definitely happening as well. But both of them are shocked because this entire story has a completely different reaction from the father than they're expecting. The father, while they're still a far way off, comes running to meet the son. Now, this is what we might not realize with the background of this culture. So, kazaza, can you guys say that with me? Kazaza was a ceremony, and is a ceremony in Jewish communities that was specifically used for situations like this. When a rebellious son or daughter left the community, spent the inheritance with reckless living or with sinning, when they came back, or if they came back, the city elders would basically meet them at the city gate and say, you can't come back. And they would smash this jar of pottery saying that until you return all the inheritance, you are basically out of this community. It was a way to shame that son or daughter. So what's happening here is that because the father is running out to go meet the son, he's actually saving them from this. He's saving him from the shame that would have happened. So if he had gotten all the way to the gate, the city elders would have basically said, you are not welcome here. We do not accept you here. And they would have shamed his son. Instead, the father says, no, that's my son. I'm going to claim him. I'm going to welcome him. I'm going to embrace him. And I'm going to bring him home before he has the chance to get shamed by the city elders. So that's why he's running that way. The other thing I wanted to point out here is that he was running, the older man. In Eastern cultures, this was an incredibly undignified thing because Eastern men wear super, super long robes. So in order to run out to meet his son, do you know what he'd have to do? He'd have to pick up the robe and basically run like a little girl, right? He'd have to run and pick up his little dress and run, and he would probably have most likely been showing some things he shouldn't be showing. He would have been incredibly undignified. It would have been humiliating for an older man in a Jewish community to pick up his robes and run. They just didn't run. That wasn't a thing that you did. Respectful men never did. So he was willing to humiliate himself to save his son. So let's keep reading. It said he felt compassion, ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. So let's compare verses 18 and 19. Can you guys look at verses 18 and 19 with verse 21? What do you guys notice about where his speech went? Compare verses 18 and 19 with verse 21. What happened to the speech that the younger son had probably prepared over and over and over again? Did he even get all of it out? No. What happened? What happened to the big speech he had prepared? His huge apology. Yeah.
Did the father interrupted him?
Yes, and why did the father cut him off? What do you think? I think he didn't really care about the apology. He just cared that his son was home, right? The son didn't have to bargain with him like, I'll work so hard to repay you for what I've done. The father didn't need payment from the son at all. He just had grace and forgiveness. He didn't have to do anything. He was home. He didn't have to prove anything. He was home. Okay? So let's talk about that dad for the second. What do you think the dad represents in this parable, in this story, that's supposed to teach us a lesson? What does the dad represent? Not one of these two, someone completely different. Who do you think the dad represents in this story? Yeah. So the dad is representing our Heavenly Father, our Father, who, when we go and sin and we're reckless and we're rebellious against his word and his ways, he welcomes us with open arms. He forgives us, and we don't have to prove anything to him. We have nothing actually to offer. Just like the son really didn't have anything to offer, we don't have anything to offer. But the son has a lot to offer, or the father has a lot to offer. Sorry about that. The father had a lot to offer the son. He gave him a robe, a ring, and sandals. The robe would have covered up how dirty and gross he would have been. He had just been playing with pigs in a Gentile country for who knows how long. So he most likely smelled, he was dirty, but he put on one of the best robes, this fine clothing, over his mess, over his stench. Then he gave him a ring. Now, rings in that time would have been all the power and authority that father had to offer. It would have been the equivalent of like giving him the family Visa card with no limit. Okay? Which is crazy to think about. This guy just spent a third of the inheritance, a third of the family fortune, and you're going to hand over the MasterCard? Because those rings, a family ring, could be used to make financial deals. So it seems so foolish that this father would give that son a ring, but yet he did. And then he gave him sandals. That was significant because, again, in this time, if you were a servant, you didn't wear shoes. If you were part of the household, part of the family, you wore shoes. So here, this father is basically reinstating the son, as a child. Okay? And this is exactly what happens with us in baptism. When you think about it, right? In baptism, Christ's righteousness is covered over us. He covers our sin. And all that's left is Christ's righteousness. Then the ring. We have the power and authority. We're given the Holy Spirit. That gives us the power and authority of God. Then we have the sandals. The sandals are saying, hey, you're a child of God. All three of those things happen in the waters of baptism. We are forgiven, right? Forgiven, that's the robe. We are given the Holy Spirit. That's kind of like that ring. And then the sandals. We are made a child of God. So we see this reinstatement happen, which is a beautiful, beautiful part of the story. So what do you think is going on in both the rebels and the religious minds during this time? When they get to this part of the story, what do you think is happening? Yeah.
They're probably like really surprised.
I think they're both really surprised. What do you think the Pharisees and scribes? They would be surprised, but what else do you think they would be feeling about the father's reaction? Would they be happy about the father's reaction? What do you think? Yeah.
I don't think so. I think they'd be like disappointed.
Yeah. They would probably be disappointed. They'd probably be like, this is how people get away with stuff, right? He should have been, he probably was saying that father had the perfect opportunity to really show that son how to behave. He should have been punished, right? But that's not what the point of the story was. And Jesus knew, again, that both of these reactions would be happening. The rebels would probably be shocked by how the father treated the son. And the religious people were probably going to be really mad about it. In fact, he definitely knew the religious people were going to be mad about it because that's why he keeps talking. The rest of the parable is all kind of towards the Pharisees and the scribes. And it's about that older son. So we're almost through the parable. Stick with me. We're going to look at verse... Where were we? Okay, let's start in verse 22. We'll back it up just a little bit. But the father said, I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this is my son, who once was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. So do you guys kind of see the parallel to the other parables? You have something that was lost, that was found, and now we get to celebrate. Okay, so that's kind of the connection there. Verse 25. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he received him back safe and sound. But he was angry and refused to go in. Why do you think the older son was angry about the treatment that the younger son was receiving from the father? The father says, I'm going to give you all these things and throw you a big party. Why would the older son be upset? Why would he be angry? Yeah. Yeah, he says, I've been working the entire time. And he actually doesn't even claim that he's a brother, right? He said to him, your brother has come. Where is it? Oh, it's a little bit further down. I'll point it out then. We're going to keep reading. Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound. But he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him. But he answered his father, look, these many years I have served you, and I never disobeyed your command. Yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him. And he said to him, son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad. For this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. So what I was going to point out is that this older brother doesn't even call his younger brother his brother. He says, this son of yours, right? My parents used to do that when we were misbehaving. My mom would come home from the grocery store, and if we were bad, she'd always be like, these children of yours, or this daughter of yours, or whatever it was. It was like disowning us as her children, right? It must have been my dad's problem. So that's exactly what this brother does. His brother says, this son of yours is the problem, and why is he getting, quote unquote, rewarded, right? So that's the older son. Who do you think the older son is representing in this scenario? Any ideas? Yeah.
The religious.
Yeah, the religious people, absolutely. So they're the people that kind of look down on the younger brother for what he's done. Okay? And the bottom line is that both of these people probably would have seen themselves in this story, right? Can you see yourself in this story? We have the younger son here, and then we have the older son here. And Jesus is kind of saying they both did something wrong, right? But what were both of their sins? Honestly, here, the younger son's sin was unrighteous living, right? Are we supposed to tell our parents that we wish they were dead, take all their money, spend it all in sin? No, right? That's unrighteous living. That's not what God wants for us. But yet, God also doesn't want what the older son did. He was self-righteous. So we have unrighteous and we have self-righteous. He said, hey, I've been perfect this whole time. Is there any chance that the older son had been perfect the entire time? No. But yet he begrudged the grace and the mercy that the father was giving to the brother. So he was basically Jesus was trying to get these people, both groups, to realize one thing with this parable. The one thing he was trying to get across to them was that we are all, whether we would consider ourselves unrighteous or we would consider ourselves self-righteous, we are all desperate for a Father who forgives us. We are all in need of God's grace and God's forgiveness. Whether you're somebody that likes to follow all the rules and make sure that you strive, achieve, never rest. I don't need anybody else. I look down on those that are sinning and living life not the way that God intends. Those people need grace. They need to realize that they need Jesus, that they need God, just as much as the people that are maybe more blatant and open about their rule breaking and their sin. And the father wanted the same thing for both the younger son and the older son. Notice that the father also goes out to meet the older son. Did you guys see that? I think that's in verse Yeah, it says in verse 28, his father came out and entreated the older son. So both times, the father is going to the son. The father's seeking a relationship with the son. In both situations, the father wants the same thing for both sons. The father wants them to be home. He wants them home. That's all he wants. He wants a relationship with them. He wants them home with him. That is the entire point of the Father's love. And that's the important point for us as well. Because unfortunately, I think a lot of times we find ourselves probably more in this category, right? You guys are at church, you're doing the right things. Maybe you find it easy to be judgmental of other people and the way that they might live, the words they might say, the actions they might take. We might find ourselves here. And honestly, there will be times in your life where you find yourself more here. But the important thing that you have to remember is that you always, always have a God that is going to welcome you back home, welcome you back to the Father. And this should also change the way that we see other people, right? If God puts this kind of value on your life, do you think he puts that kind of value on other people's life as well? Absolutely. This entire parable, what's great about it, oh, I love this picture, by the way. So this is the younger son, this is the older son, that's the father. Regardless of who that person is or what they've done, God sees that person with infinite value. God sees each one of you with value. So how do we treat people like this? We start by realizing that God loves us this way. And then we remember when we're interacting with anyone in our lives that God also sees them that way. That God loves them and values them more than anything else too. So I know I asked this question, which son are you? There's a third son in this story. What's the third son in this story? This is a little bit of a trick question, but I want to see if someone can get it. There's the younger son, there's an older son, and then there's a third son. Anyone have an idea of who the third son in the story is? Yeah. You got it right. Good job. Jesus, right? It's the person actually telling this story. This parable was taught by Jesus, and he's saying, you aren't stuck with these two options. You are not stuck as a rebel, and you're not stuck as the overly religious. In the middle, there's another son, Jesus, right? And ultimately, he was the one that was willing to die because he thought you were that valuable, and he wanted to welcome you home to the Father. That is the entire point of this parable. Now, there's a ton of parables throughout the Gospels, and I really want to encourage you, maybe in your small groups, you guys can go through some of the other parables that you might know about. That might be a good way to go about it, because parables always teach us something. And what I hope you got from tonight is that the parable of the prodigal son, it teaches us that God values each and every person and ultimately wants the same thing for each and every one of us, which is to welcome us home into the Father's house, both here on earth and also in heaven. All right? Is there any questions before we end tonight? Okay, then will you guys pray with me, and then we'll dismiss to our small groups. Dear God, thank you for the parable of the prodigal son that shows us how you infinitely value each one of us, your children. No matter what we've done or how far away we've strayed from your word, you sent your son running to find us and redeem us. Help us to see people the way that you see them, knowing they are also loved by you. And remind us this week of the love you have for us each and every day. Amen. All right, guys, have a good small group.